Side Lodge, Joe Bostic, my co-host, Mark Sturgis. Hope all of y'all are doing well, and we're going to get you ready for that noon kickoff tomorrow. Clemson at Georgia Tech, the top-ranked Tigers, 4-0 on the season, 3-0 in ACC play. Georgia Tech now evens their record at 2-2 after a nice win last Friday night, Joe, over the Louisville Cardinals. Tech's 2-1 in ACC play, and my buddy, who is a Georgia Tech fan, is living off this one single fact. Clemson has never won 3 straight games in Atlanta, but that's going to be broken about 3:30 tomorrow afternoon.
Yes, we don't have long to wait for that number to be broken.
Nope. But, we can't really look for it. I want to talk a lot about Georgia Tech. I'm fascinated with what Jeff Collins has been able to do. In many regards, I'll make the argument to you, Joe, this is a game in which Clemson faces Jeff Collins and Georgia Tech for the first time for the second year in a row.
Yes. He has done a nice job at Georgia Tech. I'll tell you, the team is not the most talented team in the ACC, but I'll tell you, they play really hard. Every game they've gotten behind, 14, 21 points. Some of them they've lost, some of them they haven't, but they always come back. So, they're a team that's not ever going to quit. So the Tigers cannot have one of those jump out to a 21-point lead and think, okay, we can unload the benches and take it easy, and all the starters can sit there drinking lemonade with their feet up. It's not going to work there.
Well, number one, Georgia Tech offense is now not predicated on Paul Johnson in the triple option. You're talking about a true freshman with Kenneth Sims. This time last year, Joe, Georgia Tech's starting quarterback was an Elite 11 quarterback starting at the high school level, and he's now won games over, quite frankly, a disappointing Louisville team at this point in the year. Yep. But the season opener at Florida State, and Georgia Tech has reached the 400-yard level in all 4 of their games this year. They didn't make it once to 400 yards of offense in a football game last season.
Yeah, they've got it. They've really been productive on offense, and Jeff Sims, the quarterback, is the next to last rated quarterback starter in the ACC. Just a little bit ahead of Bryce, our kid who used to play here. And but he's a freshman. He's going to make mistakes, but He's going to make big plays. He's a big play guy. And the thing that I'm most impressed with Georgia Tech is that they've got a freshman quarterback, and these guys believe in him, and he makes some mistakes. He's thrown 8 or 9 interceptions this year, so he hadn't been real handy with the ball. But that team believes in him, and they keep fighting. And I'll tell you, when you got a quarterback that you believe in, it makes all the difference in the world. I was thinking earlier in 1977 when we played Carolina, everybody thinks about Jerry Butler's catch, but with 1:49 seconds, we had blown this huge lead. And all the guys on our team were so disgruntled and upset that we have allowed South Carolina to get back in this game. But when Steve Fuller walked into that huddle and said, guys, you guys, I want you to catch the ball. You big guys, I want you guys to block and give me the time. We're going to run down this. We're going to run down this field. We're going to score a touchdown. We're going to get the heck out of here. And when a quarterback that you really believe in, because we all walked on that field ticked off, and when he started saying those words, I could see the eyes in that whole huddle. Guys were like, yeah, we can do this. We can get a win. Let's get out of here.
Another thing is they went to break. After taking that lead, they were raising up their uniforms with a T-shirt underneath that said "No Cigars Today," and that was in reference to Charlie Pell and you guys smoking cigars. So y'all had to have that touchdown.
Yeah, so I look at Georgia Tech kind of the same way, that they've got a quarterback they believe in. Obviously, Steve Fuller was a great player, and this guy may end up being a great player. He's not a great player now.
No.
But, when a team believes in him, they believe they can run through a wall for this guy, that's a tough team to have to deal with.
Yeah, and they're a lot better. And here's what we're going to do. In the next segment, I caught up earlier this week with Andy Demetro, the voice of the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. We'll talk with him. In our final segment, our guest picker, gonna move that switch a little bit. You know, it's chilling off a little bit. Catch up with Terrence Oglesby and pick some big games this weekend. We got, Saturday night, maybe the biggest game of the year so far, replacing Clemson's win over Miami last weekend. Alabama, Georgia, we'll break that down as well. But again, Clemson now comes in 4-0. They take on their biggest opponent this weekend, themselves. We talk about that every week. But they come off of their best performance last weekend in a 42-17 win over Miami, in which I felt like the Tigers left some meat on the bone.
Yeah, the game was a bigger blowout than the score indicated. A lot of times you'll score a touchdown or two at the end of the game. It's a really hard fought game, but Clemson made some fatal mistakes. The 61-yard field goal try,
that was greedy.
That which I think is the worst decision, and Dabo admitted that on TV.
He owned
the
it.
Worst decision he had ever made. And I texted Gary right before that, please don't do this, because there's so many things. You don't kick the ball out of the end zone. There's a little 190-pound 4.4 guy, 4.4 40 guy in the end zone, catches the ball, and you got 320-pound guys trying to chase him, reminiscent of the Alabama-Auburn game. So a lot of bad things can happen there. And but my feeling about Dabo Swinney, he's got a lot of interest built up in my bank with him. So if he makes a bad call, so be it. But, most of it, for every bad call, he's had 100 good decisions.
Well, I think a little bit of adrenaline was going there. He says he's used to seeing BT Potter kick those in practice, but that was a little bit of a wet field. But I don't think anybody really took into account worst-case scenario. You give them momentum heading into the locker room in a game in which you dominated. To me, the most important series of that ball game, Miami gets the kickoff after halftime, and immediately Brent Venables and the defense 3 and out.
Yeah, he had just a wonderful game plan last week, and I think he's going to have to use the same exact game plan against Georgia Tech. He had 6 guys on the line of scrimmage. He had linebackers in the A gap, which is on each side of the center. And then you have 2 defensive tackles and 3 techniques, and then you got the 2 defensive ends and contain. Now you can line those guys up in it. You can have all 4 defensive linemen on one side. You can have 2 linebackers on one side, so you can move all those guys around. They can stunt. They can move around. They can loop. But the bottom line is, at the end of the day, you got to have those 6 guys or 4 guys or whatever number of guys you send. They've got to be disciplined and make sure they're in their right lanes. Because when you have a pass rusher that, he's trying to put on the most unbelievable mood in the world, he rolls, he goes way too far outside, that's when the quarterback sees that big hole and takes off. And then we kind of lost containment with King on that one play. But the rest of the game, I'll tell you, Brent Venables, every time I watch us play, he comes up with a different solution. Sometimes he plays 3-man defense. Sometimes he plays 4-man defense. Sometimes he has 6 guys like he did in nickel downs against Miami. And so it's always a different look, but it's always fundamental. And I'll tell you what, he has got to be the best defensive coordinator in all of college football.
Let me ask you this. Is it dangerous in the future for a Clemson defense in a year in which 2020 we're even hearing at the national level, no defense in the SEC. Look at that win, 63-48, Alabama over Ole Miss. Mizzou beating LSU 45-41. Brent Venables' son has been getting more and more snaps, Jake Venables. And father-son combo thinking together on that same DNA level as Jake Venables becomes more comfortable eventually as a year and then in the following years, captaining that defense of what his dad sees during the week. That's dangerous for Clemson opponents moving forward.
Oh, it sure is. They're so, both of the Venables boys are really, they've got the, they just have that coach's brain with them. I think, those guys will probably end up being coaches. And but I've been very impressed with those guys. And, and the beauty of Clemson's defense, we have 5-star guys that come in, Brissett and Murphy and Xavier Thomas and all kind of guys that come in here and they walk in on campus. They look like fifth-year seniors when they get here the first day. But we have guys like Spector. We have the Venables boys. We have any number of guys that come here, 3- and 4-star guys. They develop them. They get them in the weight room. They gain 20. They gain 30 pounds. They get stronger. They get faster. They're coached up. They're on the special. They're on the the third and fourth team guys giving the look to the offense first year or two. But they learn and they grow and they get an understanding of this defense. So we develop a good number of people, and we also have those big-time, big-name guys that come in here. So, Dabo's doing it both ways. He's developing a ton of kids, and even the 5-star guys are getting developed.
Oh, yeah.
They come in the first day, they're good, but, the second and third, fourth year, they really get better and better and better and better.
Well, I think, look at Nolan Turner. A lot of people, he was that last one brought in that class a few years ago, and now all my Ohio State friends absolutely hate Nolan Turner. Why? Because there's an INT in the end zone.
Yeah, but, Tanner Muse. I mean, a lot of those guys, they come in here, they don't play much. They're special teams guy. They can run. They're whatever, but they come out and really be great players.
Before we head over to Cindy Green Isaacs and find out some things going on here on the property at Lakeside Lodge, the only negative, number one, Dabo got greedy at the end of the first half. Number two, huge drop touchdown pass by Ladson there in the second quarter. That would have been nail and coffin right there.
Yes.
But the one thing Clemson needs is that emergence of that go-to big guy wide receiver to replace a Justin Ross or a T. Higgins, because I love what the tight ends are now bringing to the mix on offense.
Yeah, Amari Rogers is really has taken that role over and is doing a fantastic job. I think the two tight ends, Davis and
Braden Galloway.
Yeah, Galloway.
Two touchdown passes.
So Nagata and Ladson, some of those other kids, they really got to start stepping up. And hopefully, I've been reading a little bit that Justin Ross may come back before the season's over with. But, you never can count on the injury, and you don't know what kind of player he's going to be. Last year, Amari Rogers came back, and he wasn't the same player last year.
He was
that
step slow for him.
Yeah, but now, and he's come back this year. And I predicted after the second, third game, he'll be an All-American this year. Amari Rogers, he has really done a heck of a job of stepping his game up, and not only stepping his game up, but becoming the type of leader that team needs.
Yeah, leadership all over the field with Clemson, and that's going to pay off in Atlanta tomorrow. But we're live here for CSN Live at Lakeside Lodge, and we're going to check in with Cindy Green Isaacs in just a second. But let me tell you about a couple of things going on here at Lakeside Lodge. It's Clemson's only resort experience. You can purchase a condo, rent it out, just rent a room for the weekend. They have 2 bars, a pool bar, a bar and Traditions on the lake. But the main thing we want to get you ready for, live music after our show tonight with Perry Major up in Traditions. Next week after the show, the Eric Weiler group will be here. And then Halloween, I've got my costume prepared for the 30th show. Can we get Joe Bostic to play along? Yeah. We have decided, Cindy Green Isaacs and all the people at Lakeside Lodge, we need to turn the 30th into a costume contest, because too many people are not laughing right now, and that's going to be leading us into probably one of the more stressful weeks we'll have in our country in a long, long time.
Yes. I think my wife has a plan for me.
Okay.
to show up here looking a little ridiculous.
I will finally be the boss, but when it comes to CSN Live from Lakeside Lodge, our boss is Cindy Green Isaacs, the third member of our crew. Cindy, what's going on with us tonight?
Well, Mark, that is very nice and very funny at the same time. But yes, I am all into having fun, especially on my favorite holiday, Halloween. But guys, listen, here at Clemson Sports News, owner Gary McDaniels shares his enthusiasm for what the title says, Clemson Sports News. But what you don't know is that Gary also gives Clemson students the opportunity to share their passion for writing through the opportunity of internships. Here I have Zach Wagner, who is a senior at Clemson, and just last week, Zach wrote an article for the website on Trevor Lawrence and how he has ranked now with some of Clemson's great Taj Boyd, C.J. Spiller, Sammy Watkins, and Deshaun Watson. So tell me, Zach, what's going on?
Yeah, when Trevor leaves here after this year and he is ultimately the #1 pick, we're going to see that 16 hanging up in Death Valley very soon. And like I said, he'll be the #1 draft pick and Clemson's first ever #1 draft pick.
I hear that he has also ranked from winning 9 career ACC honors. Give us a little bit about some of those honors.
Yeah, tomorrow he's going to break the ACC record held by Russell Wilson for the most pass attempts without an interception. If you go back to last year, he threw 2 interceptions against Louisville, and he had 8 interceptions within the first 6 games, and everyone was freaking out saying, where's Trevor Lawrence from his freshman year? Fast forward to now, he's gone 355 pass attempts without an interception, and he's leading this Tiger offense to new heights.
And we also have someone that is coming up in those ranks. We have ETN. Give me some facts on this guy.
Yeah, Travis only needs 173 yards, which he has another game like he did against Miami last weekend, tomorrow against Georgia Tech. He might become the ACC's all-time leading rusher. And right now in the Heisman rankings, Clemson has the number 1 and the number 2 Heisman candidates in Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne. So it's a great time to be a Clemson Tiger.
Absolutely. So hopefully we will be able to vote on some of those on the website. And so, Mark, I'm going to take it back to you.
Very much, Cindy. I appreciate it. Joe Bostic and I here live from Lakeside Lodge. Again, check them out at lakesidelodgeclemson.com. Also, our friends Ingles Supermarket. Stores in 6 states throughout the Southeast. They have bakeries and delis, and most importantly to me, Hank's Beverages are carried at Ingles Supermarkets, the best root beer and things of that nature. So low prices, love the savings. But, Joe, I think in football, we see more war terminology, battle, defense, bombs, missiles, this, that, or the other. One thing you have to do when it comes to the game of football, you have to know your enemy. You have to know your opposition. And Georgia Tech has been a thorn in Clemson's side for a long, long time. I remember the year, 1974, one of the biggest games that happened in Clemson in a long time. Georgia Tech made their way up I-85 to lose to Clemson. Benny Cunningham had a big game. But that just the fact that Georgia Tech and Georgia both came to Clemson University in 1974, it's like the first significant step that I remember. And they won both of those games with Mark Fellers at quarterback.
Yes, Ken Peoples and Kurt Buttermore and some of those guys were on the line. Jimmy Williamson and Thad Allen and Jeff Mills were the freshman defensive tackles. I had come to the Georgia game as a recruit that year. And having grown up in North Carolina, I never was a big Clemson fan. It really didn't know anything about Clemson. But I'll tell you what, and I was trying to talk my dad out of even coming here. I said, I really don't want to go to Clemson. And I'll tell you, within an hour of being here on that trip, went to Jervey and they went up on the field, 50,000 people. They were excited about Georgia, playing Georgia. And I sat on the field and closed my eyes. I said, I can get into these people cheering for me like this, even though they'd be cheering for Steve Fuller and all our great players. But what the heck, they're cheering. They might as well be cheering for me.
Takes a great right guard to make a great offensive line. And, of course, that was the rebirth of Clemson football. But earlier this week, for our Zoom interview, I caught up with a friend of ours, Andy Demetro, the voice of the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. A lot of people here in the upstate and throughout Clemson land may remember Andy because he was the play-by-play for South Carolina basketball and baseball. Of course, never got the football gig due to Todd Ellis, and Wes Durham leaves Georgia Tech, and Andy went down the road and replaced him at Georgia Tech. And you want to talk about somebody that's dialed in with the program, letting us know more about what Georgia Tech – he's like, listen, promote the 404. Clemson has figured this thing out. That you can have good students and good football players. Everybody says you can't win at Georgia Tech because of the academics. He goes, no, you go out there and you sell the academics because there are enough good players in this day and age. And then said, go take a look downtown Atlanta. A lot of these graduates of Georgia Tech in the flats, they're going on to make 7-figure incomes there in those tall office buildings in the ATL, and said, that's what you got to sell to be successful at Georgia Tech.
I was very lucky, and my brother was very lucky, and many Clemson guys were very lucky to play in the NFL a long time. And I played 11 years, and when I'm 32 years old, I'm done playing football. I went from being an old man in one profession to being a young man the next day. So regardless of what your aspirations are to play ball, NFL or whatever, every person has got to get a job. Now, guys now can make enough money in football where you may not ever have to get another job. Trevor Lawrence probably, at the end of his career, will never have to work again. Well, that wasn't the case in our time.
Right.
I mean, you made some money, but the bottom line was, once your playing days are over with, you better have some education to fall back on to go out and make a decent living. And so, yeah, I think, and I think Dabo does a great job of selling the academics here at Clemson, because every person's going to have to get a job at some point in time. And playing football is a job, but it doesn't last long.
That's absolutely correct. So here's some time I spent with Andy Demetro, the voice of the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. You can give him a follow on Twitter at his name, at Andy Demetro. All right, welcome back into CSN Live from Lakeside Lodge. Earlier this week, I caught up with a good friend of mine, Andy Demetro, the voice of the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. You can give Andy a follow on Twitter at Andy Demetra. That's Demetra. And Andy, interesting game in Atlanta at noon on Saturday, because I can make the case to you. Dabo Swinney and the Clemson Tigers are facing Jeff Collins for the first time for the second year in a row, because that opener last year, nobody knew what to expect. And this year, while Georgia Tech's improved, it's a lot of youngsters and freshmen. You're dealing with a brand new team.
Well, first off, Serge, thank you for being the rare broadcaster who not only spells my last name correctly, but pronounces it correctly. So you already are getting high marks here. You're right. The team that Clemson will see on Saturday bears scant resemblance to the team that you saw in Death Valley in the season opener in the first game of the Jeff Collins era. And just to put last year's game into perspective, let's flash back to Death Valley. Georgia Tech's leader in rushing attempts that game was Tobias Oliver, who's now a cornerback. Mm-hmm. Their leader in receiving yards last year was Jerry Howard. He's now a linebacker. And the player who threw their lone touchdown pass of the night, James Graham, who wound up starting 8 games at QB, was not listed on Georgia Tech's above the line chart either of the last 2 games. So Jeff Collins has tried to reshape this roster in his image and build it to the specs of his offense. All 3 of those guys I mentioned, by the way, are still on the team, and Jeff values what each guy can contribute to their locker room. But this is an offense that I think you saw last Friday versus Louisville is a little more dynamic, able to do a greater variety of things. Look, we know that Clemson is a dominant defense, and they've thrown a lot of great offenses into the wood chipper. But this team is trending, I think, in the direction and making the progress that Jeff Collins had hoped to be seeing from his guys essentially a season and a half into this overhaul of the program.
Yes, and Andy, I love what Jeff did at Temple, but he's taking advantage of his recruiting, of the transfer market. And freshman Jeff Sims, Friday night I sat down and watched him, and he didn't exactly play like a true freshman in that 46-27 win, a couple of touchdown passes. I mean, Clemson fans may be shocked on Saturday, because since Godsey lined up for quarterback at Georgia Tech, I'm not really sure Georgia Tech has completed a pass against Clemson. You know what I mean? But this is not Paul Johnson's offense coming into this football game. And last year, especially in that opener, you were having to pound square pegs into round holes.
Mm-hmm. That's essentially what it was, and just doing the best with the personnel that you have. But Jeff Sims is definitely the centerpiece. This was an Elite 11 quarterback last year. Georgia Tech was able to flip him from Florida State. And what makes Jeff well-suited to handling the demands of being a true freshman quarterback in the ACC is the moment doesn't get too big for him. And you saw that in the season opener in Tallahassee. So here he is getting the start, first game of his collegiate career against the school to whom he was previously committed. And he rallies them from 10 points down in the second half and shakes off a couple of early interceptions. The thing he performed the best versus Louisville was ball security. Right. He threw some pretty head-scratching picks, not only in the loss to Syracuse, but to UCF. And that was a huge point of emphasis during Georgia Tech's bye. But he's very sneaky with his legs. He's a long strider. He's second in the ACC in all-purpose yards. He can really rip it and make some good throws, and not afraid to stand in there Even though he's a capable runner, it's not as though he's bailing on his first read. And he's able to complete those intermediate passes that Georgia Tech's QB struggled with last year. Again, you're facing an entirely different beast in Clemson on defense, but they like what they've seen in the early development of Jeff Sims, and it should make Georgia Tech fans very excited for what the future holds with him at quarterback.
Absolutely. But defensively, that's where you got to earn your money against Clemson on Saturday. And it really starts with putting pressure on Trevor Lawrence. You know, Miami maybe took a cheap shot here and there on Saturday night. Actually got Trevor.
Are you suggesting, sirs, that Miami sometimes is capable of playing a little through the whistle defensively?
I'll tell you this much. Dabo threatened Trevor Lawrence earlier today in his press conference. If he picks up another unsportsmanlike, he'll be on the kickoff duty on the next kickoff. But no, you also like to see that emotion from Trevor Lawrence, but you have to get him under pressure, get him uncomfortable. Georgia Tech has 9 sacks already on the year, only had 17 for the entire season last year. That's one place the emphasis with Jeff Collins has gotten much better here in year number 2 on the defensive side of the ball as well.
And that's very much in line with his personality. Remember, Jeff Collins is nicknamed the Minister of Mayhem. And I think because they have good depth and talent in their back four, it gives them more trust to be able to send blitzes from exotic locations more consistently throughout a game. 9 sacks is definitely different. Georgia Tech has chronically struggled with getting consistent pass rush. And the player who really came on in the Louisville game was Antonius Clayton. And he's a defensive end out of Vienna, Georgia, former 5-star. He was the number 2 rated weak side defensive end in the country coming out of high school, who originally signed with Jeff Collins at Florida. Transferred closer to home last year, had his eligibility waiver denied right at the 11th hour before the season opener versus Clemson. So Tech didn't have him last year. Their best pass rusher last season was on the scout team. It was Antonius Clayton. And after missing the first 2 games, we've seen just that element of pass rush that he can bring and what he can do from a pure pocket collapsing standpoint that ought to have Tech fans very excited. Are they a fully formed product when it comes to the consistency of their pass rush? By no means. But I think you're seeing a defense that has more trust in sending an extra rusher because they have guys on the perimeter and in their back four with their safeties and corners that they feel confident in their man coverage. So it's another illustration that they're beginning to turn that battleship Sturge in the right direction and reshape this defense in Jeff Collins' image.
All right. Final question about this game. You're going to hear it from the coaching staff today. We expect to go out there and win. Why put them up? Why put on the pads if you don't expect to go win? And I agree. But as the voice of Georgia Tech, what are your expectations for improvement on Saturday? A competitive ball game, because Clemson hasn't really seemed to be fazed by no one in the stands yet. You know what I mean? Those little things that you may deal with on Saturday. From Georgia Tech's perspective, for Andy Demetro, what is a step in the right direction for this Jacket football program on Saturday?
Well, that's a good question. And you're right, Clemson, they're the champions. And so, of course, they're not going to be fazed. Georgia Tech, they've faced Clemson. They've faced Georgia every year. And so they have these measuring stick games already baked into their schedule. So I don't think you're going to find a team that feels as though they're outmatched or will come in really cowering into a corner like you might see from another ACC team. As far as the measurement of progress, Georgia Tech has gained 400-plus yards in each of its first 4 games. It's going to be really, really difficult to make it 5 straight. But those 4 consecutive games to begin the year topping 400 yards of offense, that hasn't happened at Tech since 1999. So are you still able to get some sustained drives? Are you still able to be multifaceted in the way you attack a defense? We haven't yet talked about Georgia Tech's running backs. And even with Jordan Mason, who was 3rd-team all-conference a year ago, unavailable the last 3 games, they've had very little drop-off in their ground game between Jamias Griffin, Dante Smith, and Jahmyr Gibbs, who's a really, really, really good freshman. And I look forward to seeing how he can measure himself against that Clemson front 7. But I want to see if there is that same emotional steadiness from the opening kickoff to the final whistle, in spite of whatever Clemson throws at them. Can Georgia Tech get the ball into plus territory on a more consistent basis? And once they get inside the red zone, can they finish those drives? Their kicking game has been unquestionably shaky. Against Louisville, they were 5 for 5 in red zone touchdowns. Without that, I don't think they would have won that game. So can they complete drives, even against a really tough Clemson defense? Those, to me, will be all the markers of whether Georgia Tech can still build off that Louisville game, regardless of what the final score may show.
Andy, I've known you for like 12 years now. And I mean, going back to your days with Bill Rosinski, and they no doubt have a great broadcaster, full-time broadcaster. And you've always been so generous with your time with me. Thanks. And I appreciate your friendship. And when you get up here for a basketball game, maybe we can try to get together for dinner.
Hey, that generosity only goes to people who are really, really good at what they do. So, Sturge, anytime. I appreciate you having me on.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right.
It always love catching up with Andy Demetro. And I thought he really laid out a fair argument that, it's got to be in increments for Georgia Tech. And, Joe, as you mentioned earlier, one of the things that the Tigers are going to have to do tomorrow is, if they get up, you better keep the foot on the pedal. You better put the foot on the throat, so to speak, because Georgia Tech playing from behind is nothing that's become unusual for them in 4 games this year.
Yeah, I've got a pretty poor research team, mainly made up of just me. But, the Florida State game, they're down 10-0. End up winning the game 16-13. They come back and play UCF. They're down 28-7, bring the score back to 28-21 before losing 49-21. Then they play Syracuse. They're down 17-0, bring the score back to 23-20. Then they end up losing 37-20. And I think the biggest collapse was the Louisville game. They're down 21-7. Georgia Tech scores the last 39-6. For the rest of the game and end up winning 46-27. So what that tells me, no quit with this team, 60-minute game. Regardless, we've been down before. We've come back against everybody, and we're not scared to be down, and we're going to keep fighting like crazy.
But the one thing that is not in those first 4 games is an opponent the caliber of Clemson. So you're not going to get down that distance and make it up on Clemson more than likely. So before we head out to break with Cindy Green-Isaacs, you play the role of defensive coordinator. How do you defense Clemson? What do you do to disrupt them enough that your team can start off on equal terms and not have to fight from 2 to 3 touchdowns deficit?
Well, what's got to happen? You got to take one. You got, in my opinion, you have the 2 best offensive weapons in college football: ETN and Trevor Lawrence. Mm-hmm. If I were a defensive coordinator, I would take ETN out of the game, and I would say, "Okay, Trevor Lawrence, you're going to have to beat us." And then I'd be going to church 7 days in a row, and I'd be on my knees praying like crazy. You got to get a bunch of turnovers. And secondly, you've got to hope that Clemson shows up. I wouldn't be putting a lot of stuff in the paper. I'd just say, yeah, these guys are great. Man, they're going to be tough. God, I don't know how you stop them. You don't want the Hornet to come into the game. You want these guys docile, feeling like, man, we're pretty good, and nobody can stop us. That's the way a defense will get Clemson. It'll be apathy on the Clemson guys, thinking you're better than you really are. Maybe weather, throw a few picks, get a few interceptions, turnovers. You just got to be lucky.
All right, before we head out to break, I'm sure your lovely wife already has a great menu planned for noon tomorrow with that kickoff in Atlanta. Secondly, on the small screen of your television, I'm sure it's going to be the South Carolina-Auburn game, because that's one of our pick'em games, and I think it might be a must-win for Will Muschamp. But if you're looking for a great place to go spend some time, watch those 2 football games, and make a little difference in the upstate, how about our sponsor, Hall of Fame Sports Grill, tomorrow? They're having a barbecue cook-off. For $10 tickets, you can try. There's like 12 different teams competing out there, and you can eat during the games, during that noon to 3 p.m. slot. So you got all the big screen TVs, everything at Hall of Fame Sports Grill. That's 531 Wade Hampton Boulevard, and those proceeds are going to help charity. But don't forget, you got Tuesday night, bar trivia for dummies. We won twice this past week.
Well, I need an invite so I can go with you and screw you up.
Oh man, come on! You put us over the top, man. But that's my night to go use my brain post stroke. Wednesday nights is music bingo, 30-second music bingo, where they play like a clip of a song. Thursday nights is Dirty Bingo, where you can steal other people's awards. Fridays is karaoke, and then a parking lot party on Saturday. But again, this Saturday, tomorrow, go for that barbecue cookout. Everything you can find online at HallOfFameSportsGrill.com, 531 Wade Hampton Boulevard. But Cindy Green Isaacs, what you got for us, sweetie?
Well, I tell you what, in getting the latest news from Clemson sports, we have our freshman intern, McKenna Beal, who writes on all sports from basketball, baseball, softball, tennis, and hair. Yes, you heard me right, hair. What does Clemson's safety, Landon Zanders, have in common with, let's see, Cole Beasley, Sammy Watkins? He has a lot of things in common. It's the hair. It's what makes the girls jealous. Well, McKenna got to sit down with Zanders and talk about those long locks and found a very interesting story. Tell me what's going on.
Well, he started growing out his hair in honor of his grandma. She had cancer, and he grew it out and donated it for her as a dedication to her.
And she has a way of paying him back, because I know that she's all clear now, and he still tributes something to her on every game, and she has a way to pay him back. What's that story?
So every Friday, she'll bring him a pan of her famous mac and cheese, which is his favorite that she makes, and he'll just have it for his pregame meal.
There you go, I'm telling you. So we just hope that he keeps that hair, and we can all sit around and be jealous of it. What do you think how is he doing as a safety, being a sophomore for Clemson?
I think he's really stepped up this year. He has 13 tackles so far, 4 of them last weekend against Miami with a big pass breakup.
Wow, that is awesome. Well, guys, that's about our Landon Zanders, Clemson safety, moving on up.
All right, thank you very much, Cindy. And, of course, the only other big news going on in this world besides college football, Braves have not gotten started tonight, Joe, but, oh, man, if they can pull out one more. I mean, do you remember some of the times here in the South when the Braves had played in a previous World Series? And, matter of fact, I can honestly remember being in Atlanta working for JP Sports on a wet Clemson Georgia Tech game that I think ended up in a loss under Tommy Bowden. But that was also the very same night that they beat Cleveland, and everybody ran out of the bars in Atlanta. And I never thought that I'd be walking the yellow line on Peachtree in Atlanta unless I had a police officer that had pulled me over. But that's the other thing that has captivated my attention this week.
Yeah, the Braves, what a great story for those guys. And I'll never forget, I guess it was the Minnesota Twins and Atlanta Braves played in the World Series. John Smoltz and Jack Morris got together, and it was like a 2-1 game.
I think it's 1-0.
Yeah, it was just a crazy. I mean, and I'm pulling like crazy for the Braves, and John Smoltz is pitching a great game, and they can't get one run, and they had some opportunities, but I don't know if the world's ready for Atlanta Braves and the Tampa Bay Rays World Series. So
played in California?
But I think it's great to have, different teams in there.
So let me ask you this in the sports world, because 2020 is taking the norm out of everything. Yep. I mean, look at the North Carolina-Virginia Tech game this past week. 56-45. You would think our good friend Seth Greenberg was back at the head coach at Virginia Tech, and that was a basketball game and not a football game between these two schools.
Absolutely.
But somebody was making the argument the other night, put an asterisk next to the Lakers championship win. I say no, because when you look at those games competed in a bubble, there not may be a more fair outcome in all of sports history, because you didn't have to deal with home court advantage and things of that nature.
No, it's they won a championship. I'm not a Lakers fan, but they're the best team. They went through the regular season with the best record, and they performed during the playoffs, and they are by far the best team, and they're the world champions. So, I don't care where you play the game. We used to say at Clemson when we started getting good in the last 2 years, we'll play at your field, we'll play at our field, we'll play in your parking lot. We'll go down to Ingles parking lot if you want to, and we'll play there. We don't care where we play. If we want to play in a bubble, let's play. And, an athlete doesn't care where the field is.
The bad part is I made my television debut on Smoky Mountain Wrestling with Jim Cornette back in the day, and I'm waiting over my shoulder to see if Bullet Bob Armstrong or somebody's going to come out. But, let's talk about it. You and I might end up having to eat a little crow. Every once in a while we're good. We make the good claims. But you and I both thought if there was one coach in the ACC that might have some heat on him this year if he did not produce, that would be Dave Dorn at NC State. And then they go out in the opener at Virginia Tech, and Virginia Tech's down, 17 players due to COVID, and get spanked. Don't look now, but after taking care of Virginia 38-21 last week, NC State's 3-1 this year, 3-1 on the season, heading into a game this weekend in which they could win. All of a sudden, don't look now, but Dave Dorn and the Wolfpack have turned it up a notch.
Yeah, what's Leary, the quarterback?
Mm-hmm.
Boy, it's been such a what a transformation. And that's what we were talking about before. You get a quarterback, and this guy looks like a very, very capable quarterback, but the thing, you've got to have the dressing room. You got to have those kids with you, and you got to be in that huddle, and you've got to demand respect. And boy, when you say something and have all those 10 other guys look at you and say, you know what, I believe in what you're saying, and by God, I'm going to give it every ounce of effort I got. When you get that thing rolling, that's a tough team to beat.
Well, let's look across the ACC real quick because, again, we were talking about NC State. We were singing the praises of David Cutcliffe and Duke. And after this weekend, Duke could fall to 1-5 at NC State there at 3:30 on Saturday. 2 noon matchups, Pitt 3-2 at Miami 3-1. Now, I noticed Virginia took a very physical beat-down loss the week after facing Clemson.
Yes.
Is Miami going to be susceptible to the same thing on Saturday against Pitt? Because I would love to go back over the last 5 years and look at records the week after they play Clemson or Alabama or even The Ohio State University, for that matter.
Yeah, you get so amped up for a big game, and when things don't work out, even when they do work out, I think you're even more vulnerable when you go to a big game like that and you are successful. I've heard people last week, they talk about Texas, Southern California, and Miami. The 3 teams that you hear all the time, are they back? Are they back? Are they back? Quit asking when you're back. I mean, when you start beating Clemsons and when you start beating Oklahomas, when you start beating Oregons in the Pac-12, that's when you'll know you're back, not before. Don't put the cart before the horse. Go out, stick to your knitting, do your job, get better each week. The results will follow, and don't worry about, we're back, the U's back, the U's back. I mean, Clemson used that as motivation. I think they had more motivation than Miami did.
I'll do this for any Miami fan. First of all, don't cheap shot a quarterback and then talk trash over him and then have your head coach come in afterwards and go, there's just inches of difference between Clemson and Miami. Yeah, like 4 million is the distance in inches between Miami, Florida, and Clemson, South Carolina. And that's what it felt like.
There's a lot of difference in class, and there's a lot of difference in culture. And I'm going to say this about Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence, if you read the book by its cover, long-haired guy, cool guy, sunshine, beach, on a surfboard, whatever. I'm going to tell you something. There's a fire in that kid's belly. And, he'll be the number 1 pick in the next NFL draft. He will have a successful career. You can see that kid was a great player last year, went to that national championship game, and I think he would be the first person to tell you he was not the best quarterback on the field. But I think after that game was over with, he had a little time with himself and said, you know what, there's things I've got to get better at. I'm sure he went to either his coach, Brandon Streeter, or Dabo, or somebody there and said, hey, I need to be a better player. So, you start running your mouth to him, you're just going to get him motivated. The best thing you do is let that dog lay on the porch and leave him alone. Because I'm going to tell you, that kid has got a fire in his belly, and he's going to be a big-time player.
Speaking of leaving alone, The Syracuse Orange, they're 1-3 on the year, but they're playing an undefeated team tomorrow at home. The Liberty Flames, man, don't mess with Hugh Freeze. He's coaching his way back up to the Power 5 job.
Yep, he sure is. He's a heck of a coach.
Louisville, boy, that's the team I'm disappointed in. I thought they were much improved, and they were in year number 1, but maybe, you get a year to figure them out. But they're 1-3. They will play at number 5 Notre Dame tomorrow. I have no doubt the Fighting Irish will win.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes when you've experienced something like you have with Bobby Petrino, have an absolute horrible year. I cannot remember Clemson playing a team at Death Valley that was worse than that team. I think we scored 77 points against those guys. And you come back the next year and you win 8 games. That's another thing. You start, puffing up your chest, feeling like you're worthy of some people patting you on the back. And maybe they just didn't come to this season with the right amount of hunger, intensity, and focus. And hopefully he'll be able to turn that thing around. But, they did not look like a good team at all.
All right, at 4 p.m. tomorrow. To me, this is the knockout bowl. Virginia at Wake. Both teams are 1-2, and we thought highly. We think highly of their coaches, but I don't think either one of them survive a 1-3 start.
No, it's we just did not play well against the University of Virginia, and I think when the game was over, man, they're a really good team. Well, I think they're a decent team, but they're not a great team, and
no,
we did not play a good game.
No, but I'd rather hear that 2 weeks after the game than 2 days after the game. I think sometimes you just tip your cap, you move on, and you quit whining until you get one more in the books that go, that was a misnomer on the year. 2 other games in the ACC. Tomorrow, I'm not sure how much I'm buying North Carolina as a top 5-6 team right now, but the Tar Heels are 3-0. Florida State looked like they had a little bit of life in them last week at Notre Dame. I see a shootout in this game, but I think North Carolina will win.
Yeah, I think North Carolina will prevail too. Mac Brown is a Florida State graduate.
Ooh.
He has never beaten Florida State ever.
He and Lee Corso were there right at the end of the Florida State Women's Teachers College reign, huh? Okay.
But I think he's going to get his first win against his alma mater.
8 p.m. I'm telling you, the most improved team in the ACC, which will come in here on Halloween, is Boston College.
Oh.
They're 3-1. They're at number 19 Virginia Tech tomorrow, 8 o'clock on the ACC network. I tell you what, this is a game that can go either way, because the one thing I love is a good offensive line, and that, not just because you're my co-host, Joe, but that can win and control you a game, and that's one thing that Boston College has.
Yeah, Boston College has got a quarterback, Jerkovic, or I think that's his name, but he came from Notre Dame. He is a good quarterback, and he has done a good job, and happily one of the defensive coaches from Ohio State, who's their head coach now, he's a top-notch coach, and has done a really, really solid job with Boston College.
All right, before we head back out here, because I know that what's coming up in this next break, it's very important to me. My wife, who is not here tonight, we got somewhere we got to be early in the morning. She's a 2-time breast cancer survivor. We brag so many times about this fantastic facility that we broadcast from, Lakeside Lodge, and we will tell you more of how you can rent a room, purchase a condo, what all goes on here at Lakeside Lodge. But they are even giving back to the community through Breast Cancer Awareness Month in October. Cindy?
Yes, Mark, I know something that's very dear to your heart, Joe's heart, and probably everyone here. Yes, we know that October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and here I have General Regional Manager for the Traditions on the Lake here at Lakeside Lodge, the restaurant. I have David Slevin here, and the restaurant has many things that they are doing to promote the Cancer Awareness Month. So tell us a little bit about those ideas.
Yeah, we're really excited to be able to give back to cancer research, especially the month of October with Breast Cancer Awareness Month. We have a lot of really exciting menu items, whether it be food or alcoholic beverages. Everything that we have done, we have made pink. So we're really excited. We're running the specials tonight, the 16th through the 24th next week, and a percentage of our revenue with all those menu items, we will give to breast cancer research.
What days are you open, David?
We are right now Wednesday through Sunday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, 11 to 9 p.m. And Sunday, this will actually be our, I believe, 4th Sunday that we're open for brunch at 10 a.m., where we have a special brunch menu for everyone.
All right, David, I love desserts. So can you tell me a little bit about one that's pink?
Well, they're all pink, like I said. We do have a raspberry parfait for the people that like more light. And one of our pastry chefs, that she did a fantastic job, we do have a pink sponge cake topped with strawberries and whipped cream.
Okay, that sounds like a plan for me. All right, guys, here you have it. Come to Lakeside Lodge, Traditions on the Lake restaurant, and enjoy and give back to the community and Breast Awareness Month.
All right, Cindy, thank you very much. And now we get to have some fun. Joe, this has turned in, the final segment has turned into one of my favorite segments because we've introduced people to a wide variety of the heritage here at Clemson University, from Billy D to Taj Boyd, and now one of the deadliest sharpshooters that I've ever seen come through Clemson, South Carolina, Terrence Oglesby.
Nasty.
The second most famous maybe person on this stage from Bradley Central High School in Cleveland, Tennessee. I was just asking Terrence about, I actually had a cousin who was the head coach at Bradley Central there in Cleveland, who left and went to Memphis to join Rex Dockery's staff, who was later killed in an airplane crash like Bo Ryan. But I'd always thought you went to Cleveland High School, Terrence Oglesby. Welcome to CSN Live.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you having me. And it's only about a 3-mile difference between Bradley Central and Cleveland, so I guess it's not too big of an issue.
You know, a lot of people don't realize about that area that Bob Jones University, located in Greenville, South Carolina, was originally there in Cleveland, Tennessee.
Absolutely. And I think the campus turned into Lee University, which has just skyrocketed since. It's a beautiful campus, Division II school now, I do believe.
Absolutely. And that's up near the neck of the woods that I bought some property over toward Ducktown, Tennessee, and up there in the mountains, man. It's actually Blairsville, Georgia, where we have bought. And I love to go whitewater rafting and be outside. And I'm sure that was a little bit of part of your heritage growing up in that area.
Well, we lived on the Ocoee.
Okay.
We actually lived up in Polk County, and I went to school in Bradley County, which I guess people in South Carolina listening don't know all about southeast Tennessee, but yeah, so yeah, it was definitely part of it, and we were always up in the woods running around.
So what possessed you coming out of Cleveland? You know, I look back at your years from 07 to 09, and you know, Joe played 12 years in the NFL, and of course, one of the highest points of Clemson football was Woody hitting Charlie Ballman in the Gator Bowl. But to me, as much fun as I've had on some of these championship runs, y'all's year you made it to the ACC championship game, the ACC tournament finals in Charlotte against North Carolina. That was as special as some of the things that Clemson has done in football, because I remember I was buying tickets for friends and family on the way out going, I know I'm going to have no problem selling these tonight.
Oh, absolutely. And after the first game, I believe we played Boston College in the first round. After that first game, the hotel we were staying in for that tournament kind of started to fill up a little bit. And then after we beat Duke, we couldn't even get in the lobby. So we ended up having to take a back elevator to get up through our hotel and just to be able to prepare for the game. And I'll never forget how quick the turnaround was, because we lost, I think it was 4 points to North Carolina in the finals. And then after that, we had to go for Selection Sunday. So there was like no time to be like, oh man, we got it. It was right to the next level of preparation. And that was a really good team with Cliff Hammonds and James Mays and all those guys. That was a lot of fun to be a part of. And both of those two are actually still playing. And Sam Perry, another one, is actually living out in Arizona right now. So,
yeah. One of my absolute favorite memory in Clemson basketball was with Terrence, and my son Mark's out there, and a good friend of his we used to invite down to games, and they're 10 years old. Play Florida State. I don't know what year would that be, 2006 or 7?
I think it was 2008. It would have been my freshman year.
Yeah, and so they're playing, and Clemson's down by 9 points or so with like a minute and a half to go, and I think it's a double overtime game. Well, this guy here, I mean, he starts drop kicking balls in from like 40 feet out. And so I'll never forget Aaron Spivey, who ended up playing at Wake Forest, was in the back seat of the car.
Who was a good player at Wake Forest,
Yeah,
by the way.
he didn't play a whole lot. He's a walk-on guy, but he's a good kid, great kid, though. And I'll never forget him sitting in the back seat once we got in the car, and he just said, Mr. B, Mr. B. He said, man, that little white boy, man, he can shoot it, man. He said, that dude was hot. And that's my favorite memory of Clemson basketball. And I got so in tune with that year that you guys played North Carolina. I was in Charlotte, and we were out in Montana or Idaho, and you guys played Villanova the first round of the playoffs.
Yep.
Y'all were a 5 seed, they were a 12. And that was historic. There's always a 5 seed that gets beat. But it was a heck of a game, and that was really a heck of a year.
Well, I think we were up 20, and then I guess our legs just ran out. And if you want to think about we lost in the first round probably to one of the only coaches in the country that could figure out the press, and Jay Wright, which doesn't help things.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't. All right, you've also here, you're now a 2-time grad of Clemson University, a 2-time proud grad, but you've been around Coach Brunell's program. You've been part of the broadcast crew. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, you're going to be doing some broadcasting for another local university.
Anderson University.
University.
So a good friend of mine is the AD down there, Bert. Bert. I forget Bert's last name. Bert's, I don't know how to pronounce it. How about that?
Yes.
Bert's a really good friend of mine. He called and asked if I'd be interested, so I decided, well, I'm going to do the play-by-play just to kind of get experience and get to do the other side of the call. So I think that'll be good. It's good to learn, different parts of the business, not just the color commentary.
That's right.
I think it'll help me develop into better on screen and better behind the radio.
See, I went to school for all this, and the advice was if somebody didn't show up for work or somebody. And they say, can somebody do it? Raise your hand. Just say, I can do it. They're going to show you what needs to be done if you don't know how to do it. And I would think that's the same way. Learn play-by-play, learn color, because you never know when that call's going to come one day, and they say, can you do this? So one final thing. Now we're seeing Clemson basketball, great recruiting manifesting itself. I'm not going to sit here and tell you there hadn't been a little bit of troubled waters here, but I think this is one time when being patient may manifest itself in success.
Well, stability. If you look around the ACC, you look at Roy Williams, who's been at Carolina for a long time, Leonard Hamilton. It took him a while, too. And I think people, they get impatient. They want it right away. Well, he was able to build the culture and continue to recruit the kind of players that he wanted in order to be successful. Brad Brownell's starting to do the same thing. 5 out of the last 8 signees or players that they have committed are top 100 kids. Now you're starting to get the size with the skill, and you're going to be able to compete in those games. They're no longer going to be upsets. And Brad Brownell's always been able to coach, as is evidenced by some of the other teams that he's had win a lot more games than they probably needed to with the talent that he had on the roster.
The good, and this is, football's a different story here, but we are definitely a developmental basketball school. We don't have one and done guys. So we get these guys in, they come in as freshmen, they get a little better, get a little better, get a little better. And we can have 3 or 4 seniors on a basketball team that can play against, top 5-star freshmen.
Absolutely.
And so, that we may get the 5-star guys, top 10 recruits or something at some point, but we don't get those guys now. So we have to develop and get better and better and better, and have guys get strong and big and everything else to be able to knock around these little skinny little freshmen.
Yep.
And, I think, to me personally, I think Brad Brownell is the best coach we've ever had as far as X's and O's, and just from looking at it from somebody that really doesn't know much about basketball, but he looks like a really top-notch coach.
Well, he definitely has that reputation. After working with him for 2 years, I can attest that is the case. But you've heard this in football time and time again, get old, stay old.
Yes.
And the way that this recruiting classes are starting to shape up. So you have Josh Beadle out of Cardinal Newman out of Columbia, very good guard, probably one of the better guards in the state coming, 6'4" point guard. You have Lucas Taylor coming over, 6'6", 2 guard from North Carolina. They're going to be juniors when Alamir Dawes and Chase Hunter, Alex Hemingway, and Nick Honor, whenever those guys move on. So you get old and you stay home instead of having to reset and go back to freshmen and sophomores.
I guess that's the maturation of a program over the course of
Absolutely.
time. So, all right, before we pick some games here with you, let's catch up real quickly with another legend. That's Mama Boyd, the mom for our former Clemson quarterback Taj Boyd. Then we'll pick some games, and then we'll give you up to date with what we got going on for the rest of October. And then we're going to go enjoy Perry Major and his live acoustic music up at Traditions on the Lake.
Yes, with Breast Cancer Awareness Month, we have Mama Boyd here, who is a cancer survivor. Not only is she a survivor, she is a positive thinker and one who likes to push forward in all situations. She has written a book and is here to talk to us about that.
Good evening. Thank y'all for having me. My book is called From the Heart of Mama Boyd, and it's sold at Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, and Books A Million, you know, basically where books are sold. And in my book, it just tells the journey of the behind-the-scenes look at a high-profile athlete's family that pushed forward and stuck together to make the vision of one kid's dream come true. We're still pushing for visions and dreams to this day. We have the Taj Boyd Foundation, and we're taking another direction with the mission statement, and we're pushing for a mentoring center in the upstate for at-risk children. So we've been working behind the scenes. We love Clemson, been here 10 years, got to keep pushing forward. My book will show families how strength and positivity and prayer can overcome anything. Thank y'all for having me here tonight.
And I think that wraps. That was really good. Thank you for being here.
Okay.
All right, welcome back in. Thank you, Mama Boyd. Love you as always. There's a lady who has raised one classy son who has left a legacy at Clemson, but now she's working on my daughter as well, and I'm really appreciative of that. But as we're joined here, we're going to pick some games. Our guest picker is Terrence Oglesby.
It's my first time doing this, by the way, so you're going to have to give me a little leeway. I'm going to do my best.
Well, you are from Tennessee, and I did live up in Knoxville for 12 years, and nothing sucks like a big orange.
No doubt.
All right, but listen, a couple other things about Terrence. Career high 25 versus South Carolina in 2008. Thank you very much. That was 6 of 10 from three-point land. You've got a new podcast coming up called Let It Fly with Terrence Oglesby. And then finally, people can find you on Twitter. You do a great job there as well. Coach TO22.
That's it. And also looking to publish a magazine here in the next 2 weeks, ACC Breakdown 2021, and looking forward to that. I think it's a simple read, and I think it's going to give everybody just enough information.
And that's the key. Keep it simple, sucker.
Exactly.
Absolutely. All right, you ready to your first time picking some games? I control this, so the way I look at it is I am undefeated and I win every week. And no offense, I don't have to admit my 2-3 week in which I lost a couple of weeks ago because that didn't happen, Joe.
Yeah, it's just that was an illusion.
It was. I was just tired of being dominant and just it's like my marriage of 22. Every once in a while, you got to let the wife win an argument just to let her feel good about things, right?
That doesn't work that way in my house.
Yeah, neither does it in mine. But you know what? We have dreams, don't we? We have dreams.
I don't win many in my house either.
Yes, honey, tell me where to be and what time. And now that I'm on the pill box, the 7-day-a-week pill box after my stroke, that's when I gave up all hope for winning in my household anymore. But listen, this is going to be a great game tomorrow night at 8 p.m. We're going to start off Boston College at Virginia Tech because I love first of all, I think Coach Fuente is starting to build his own scheme in Blacksburg. Right. I'm sorry. He did a really good job of having to take in Bud Foster and that regime after Coach Beamer. That wasn't his guy, but he made it work. I'm starting to see this become a little bit of Virginia Tech's program. Boston College at Virginia Tech, Joe.
Well, that's a tough one to pull, to figure out a little bit, Virginia Tech's had some really good games last week. It just did not look good defensively at all, and got way behind. And kind of going through the Burmeister and the other quarterback. I am going to go and I don't have a strong feeling about this, but I'm going to say Va-Tech wins at home at Lane Stadium.
All right.
Am I allowed to say not so fast? Is
Yes.
that how we do things?
Yeah, not so
I'm going
fast,
not so
my
fast. I
friend.
love Phil Jerkovich. I think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the ACC. He does a phenomenal job throwing his receivers open. He does a really nice job. I love that kid.
I
And
love
with
him
the
too.
new coach, defense is stingy. I'm going Boston College.
And I've taken them 3 out of 4 times and ridden them to a 75% success rate. I'm with you. And to me, I'd normally take Virginia Tech in this game, but this much I've figured out. 2020, nothing's normal about it.
I don't have
Nothing
I don't
is
have a
normal
real
about
strong
it.
feeling about that one
Yeah.
myself.
Now, I made the case to you earlier, Joe. This is a must-win for Will Muschamp at South Carolina because let's be honest, you're 3-22 in your last 25 games against ranked opponents. You're basically a C program, if you will, in the Southeastern Conference. Auburn is a chance for you coming off a 41-7 win at Vanderbilt, which everybody's feeling good. If you are going to get back into the middle of the pack in the SEC, you got to win this game. You got to prove you're making progress in year number 5. How do you think, that plays for Carolina fans, much less the outcome of the game?
Yeah, I agree with that, but I just think Auburn's got better talent. It's my understanding that Vanderbilt had 56 scholarship players available last week, and the rule was if you get below 53, they got to cancel the game. So, Vanderbilt doesn't have the best talent in the SEC by any stretch of the imagination, and so when you start taking 30 guys off of their scholarship list and you got to play with those guys, I don't think that game last week was real indicative of how well South Carolina's playing. I think they're playing solid, but I think Auburn gets the win.
I have to agree with him right there. USC, they did beat Vanderbilt pretty well. They've had some good showings, including a good first half against Tennessee. I just can't pick a Gamecock team. I can't do it. Auburn hasn't defended anybody, but like you said, they do have significantly better talent, especially along the front lines.
Yep.
I'm going Auburn. Lesser Tigers by 100.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take South Carolina because if not, even though it's not a good-looking LSU team, if they beat Auburn, they can go in there feeling better about things. But you got Auburn, LSU, and Texas A&M the next 3 weeks. They don't look as daunting, that 3-game stretch, as it did. But you get behind the 8 ball and you lose to Auburn, that could be 0-3 and things get out of hand. Yeah. So if they don't win this, it could get a lot worse.
LSU, I am mystified at what's happened there. I mean, it's not even comprehensible.
Right. All right, my favorite program to pick on, because I lived in Central Florida for a while. It's a commuter school, and they declared themselves national champions a couple of years ago. The Central Florida at Memphis. This is probably the best group of 5 game out there. The one thing that I know I'll take on this game is probably going to be the over. But what do you think with Central Florida and Memphis? Because I thought Central Florida was trying to make the case for an undefeated season, and then Tulsa comes in and hands them a loss at home.
Well, they just weren't focused.
Yeah.
I think that goes a long way, especially right now with so many distractions. It just kind of takes it out of you. However, Memphis, I think they're going to take it up another notch. Memphis is 0-2 against the spread this year. Typically, that kind of leads to a win. I think they're going to go 0-3 against the spread. I like UCF. Power 5 talent usually wins in the Big 5.
Yeah, I'm going to go with UCF too. And Terrence knows, the guy you're fighting is the guy in the mirror. Every day, the guy that you stick the toothbrush in their mouth, that's the guy you're fighting with all the time. And I do agree. Central Florida was not focused. It wasn't ready for the game. And when that happens, you get a big fat L.
Well, you said you can't pick the Gamecocks. I can't pick Central Florida. So I'll take Memphis due to some family relate, but you never know what can happen in the Liberty Bowl. Mentioned this earlier. This is a knockout game. Virginia at Wake Forest. I think Wake might be a 2.5-point favorite. Either way, it's within 2 points either way. Neither one of these teams are going to get behind a 1-3 8 ball and have much success this year. I'm going to go first because I think Virginia is a little mentally beat up after the Clemson game and then coming back with NC State. Dave Clawson somehow, some way gets it done Saturday.
Yeah, this is almost like the first game, BC and Virginia Tech. I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other, but I've got a little more faith in Bronco Mendenhall to turn it around and have his guys ready to play after a very disappointing loss last weekend.
I'm looking at strength versus strength. Virginia, Brennan Armstrong, rocket left arm, really mobile quarterback, played really well against Clemson too.
Yes.
And I think that Clemson hangover is gone.
Yeah.
Wake's defensive line is really good, of course. First-round pick in Basham. I still like Virginia just because strength versus strength. I think Armstrong's going to be able to negate a little bit of that speed around the edge.
All right, the game of the weekend, no doubt. Number 3, Georgia. Number 2, Alabama. It's not strength versus strength. It's Georgia's defense is their strength. Alabama's offense is their strength. Nick Saban passed his second COVID test like he really thought he wasn't going to coach Saturday night in Tuscaloosa. You know, he was diagnosed with COVID, had to get 2 more non-positive tests. He got a second one today. He will be coaching, it looks like, tomorrow night in some capacity at Bryant-Denny State. And number 2, we don't know if it was a false positive because you saw the story earlier today. The Indianapolis Colts shut down their facility due to 4 positive tests, and all 4 of them turned out to be false positives. So he has been tested twice in 24 hours. No positive test. He gets tested again tomorrow. He's back on the field.
Before I pick this game, is he going to be on the sidelines or is he going to be in the booth?
That I don't know. That I don't know. But it's obviously Georgia defense versus Bama offense. Feels like we've seen this storyline a few times in the last few years.
Yeah, I've got to go with Alabama. They're at home. I don't know the home field advantage is that big a deal anymore with this small crowds. No assistant coach, former assistant coach, has beaten Nick Saban. And for whatever reason, Kirby Smart has figured out some of the most creative ways to blow games against Nick Saban and Alabama. I don't know if it's all the years that he coached there, feels like he owes them something or what. But
talking about that fake punt.
Well, every time they played it, the Tua game.
Yeah.
Just had the game in the bag and then, kind of evaporated the second half. So I'm going to stick with Alabama on this, but I do think it's going to be a knockdown, drag-out affair. And if you are faint of heart, I would not be putting the pads on this week because they're going to be grown men out there, Sunday dudes that are going to show up, and there's going to be a bunch of them on the field, and they're not going to be playing.
I'm going Georgia.
Okay.
Kirby Smart's due. Bama hasn't been as good this year, regardless of ranking and so forth. And the Saban thing freaked me out, though, because I thought he was going to either be at home or he was going to be upstairs. And I was curious to see how the kids were going to be with the substitute teacher in with Sarkisian. That was going to be a big thing for me.
I'm going to put an asterisk by my choice.
Are we allowed to have asterisks?
Yeah, sure.
If Nick Saban is not
2020.
That's true.
If Nick Saban is not in the stadium, I'm going with Georgia.
You know what? I'm going to take Bama, number 1, because I spent 5.5 years of my dad's money there. Number 2, another reason that Brad Brunell is such a tough guy, he was a Sigma Chi at DePaul University. Not DePaul, DePaul.
That's right.
I was a Sigma Chi at Alabama, so Coach and I have that little friendship in there. But sooner or later, you may have to score points to win a game. Bama has proven they can do that with those 3 wide receivers and Najee Harris and, quite frankly, what looks almost like a professional offensive line. But take my Bama fandom out of it. Take my, all my Bama stuff out of it. I just think that they are more apropos to win a 38-35 game than Georgia might be.
And Terrence could tell you this, and everybody that's played any kind of games, everybody that's really watched games, there's a process that you go about learning how to win and then thinking that you're going to win. There's many games that we would go into the last part of my career at Clemson where we knew we were going to win. We walk out on that field, doesn't matter what happens, we turn the ball over 4 times or whatever, we're still going to beat you. Early in my career, we were not very good. We always thought, man, maybe we can win. So that knowing you can win is a big, big part of that.
T.O., let me ask you this. How many times did you play in Chapel Hill as a member of the Tiger team?
Twice.
All right. Did you go in there both times feeling like you had a chance to win, or did you feel like you had that black cloud hanging over you that Clemson had not ever won on the road in Chapel Hill?
I thought we were going to win every time.
Well, that's what a true athlete should do.
And y'all had some really good games against them.
We did. We went into double OT, I think my freshman year when they won the national championship. I think Danny Green went nuts right at the end.
I mean, y'all had like a little 4 or 5 point lead, and then
That's
tightened
right.
up, and whatever. But I mean, they were good games.
The great games.
Did you have an arena that, for whatever reason, the sight line wasn't right, or the crowd was weird, whatever, that you just didn't play your best?
Florida State was hard because there was never anybody there at that time, and they served alcohol, so there would be some serious there would be some things happening in that audience.
But you go back and you look over the history of Nick Saban at Alabama. What's been his one horror hole? It's been Oxford, Mississippi. We saw a child get conceived there, 5 years ago, post-game, down on the field. You know what I mean? When they upset him. Bama had to win another game, 3 or 4 years ago, much in the same realm. So
You just threw me off. A child was conceived
yeah,
on
dude,
the
they
floor.
literally, somebody got the picture. They're man and woman in the middle of an on-field celebration, and yes, they are doing the Humpty Dumpty.
Well, I'll take your word for it. I do not want to see the film.
No.
But the point being, that is Bama's horror hole. You know what I mean? And they
Mobile
got,
quarterbacks.
Yeah,
with
that
Ole Miss.
too.
Yeah.
But they got out with that bad game, so kind of like Clemson, Virginia. Are you going to get that twice from Alabama? I have more faith in Nick Saban than I do Kirby Smart, but we will see. That's why they play the game.
Should be a heck of a game.
T.O., again, you're going to be with Anderson University this year.
And then calling games here for the men's and women's basketball team whenever Beret can't make it, or wherever there's a backup. So,
and then also you got your podcast coming up.
yes, sir.
Fast Lane, right? Or
Let It Fly.
Let It Fly.
Yeah,
excuse
Let It
me.
Fly with Terrence Oglesby.
Yeah, my memory sucks now. And then finally, got a magazine coming out here. So a lot of different things. You got your
COVID kept me
fingers-
busy, I guess. I was stuck in the house, and I had to do something. So, yeah.
Well, listen, thank you for joining us tonight. But
Yeah, thank you
listen,
for having
now
me.
that you know that we're here, and next week, man, we're knocking it out of the park. We've got Don Munson joining us. Our Zoom interview. I'm going a little different route next week. The Orlando Sentinel's Matt Murchell, their national college football writer. I'll go ahead and lay money, since we're picking games, he'll have a bow tie on when I interview him next week. And then afterwards, the Eric Weiler group. Remember how good they were a couple of weeks ago? The 3-piece band?
Oh, yes,
They're
yes.
coming back as the entire 5-piece band
Oh,
for
wow.
the post game. And then we're going to let y'all know on Halloween, it is going to be, Joe is now already signed up for it. We're going to do costumes here and some trick-or-treating. And then we have a funk band out of the Charlotte, Rock Hill, Fort Mill area by the name of Subtle that's going to come in and perform for us on the 30th. So couple of big weekends that are going to round out in October, but thanks to Cliff and Clifton and, of course, Gary McDaniel and Cindy Green Isaacs and all the people here at Lakeside Lodge. Find out what you need to at lakesidelodgeclemson.com. And, of course, please come and eat off the pink menu, because a portion of those proceeds are going to go support breast cancer. But, again, loved it, Joe. I kind of like this setup much more.
Yeah,
You
I
know
do-
why?
I do too.
I'm much more intimidated when I'm this much closer to you, where I know if I say something wrong, you can reach out and box me.
Oh. Well, first of all, you don't say anything wrong. Secondly, when the fight breaks out, I'm going to find out where the fight is, and I'm running the other way.
I know.
I'm way too old to even contemplate.
All the fraternity fights when I was at Alabama got started with somebody my size, but they always ended up rotating to the back of the fight while the big guys took
Well,
over.
I'm-
You
I
know
think
what I
That's
mean?
still true. I think that's still the way those things
Yeah, I
go.
want to rotate out of the fray. That's what I want to rotate.
I'm too old for that. Terrence, thank you very much. Thank you for all you do for Clemson University. And next week, we'll be right back here at Lakeside Lodge, CSN Live. Thank you all. Have a great week.